I've had the incredible privilege and joy of 3 times doing a bike ride through the desert in Israel, a 300-mile bike ride that goes from Jerusalem all the way to Eilat. And I was thinking about it recently because just there is nothing like, sometimes you're with a group of other riders and sometimes there's just stretches for miles right through the middle of the Negev desert, just on your own, on a bike, just looking at the mountains of the Arava, the mountains of Jordan on one side, the mountains of Israel on the other side, right through that Syrian-African Rift Valley. And occasionally I would stop by the side of the road and just take it all in. And actually my first encounter really with Eretz Yisrael, with Israel, was I went literally straight from the airport. I didn't do what a lot of people do when I landed in Israel and went straight to the wall. I went on a bus and went right down south to Kibbutz Yahel in the Arava Valley, and I spent 3 months in the desert. And there's something incredibly powerful about the desert. I think when I think about that being my personal connection to Israel, it's so hard to contemplate what is actually happening there now. And I don't really want to talk about this on the day that we're really celebrating the school, but what I do want to talk about is just the power of the desert. I hope some of you, many of you, all of you have had an experience in deserts, if not the Negev desert, perhaps some of the amazing deserts that we have in this country. There's something really powerful about being in the wilderness, in the desert. And it's not for nothing that the 4th book of this Torah that we read today, or that we start today, I should say, is in Hebrew called Bamidbar, in the wilderness, in the desert, in that wild place. And a lot of the commentators say we always read Bamidbar, the first parsha of this 4th book of the Torah, right before Shavuot. And it reminds us that it was in the Midbar, in the desert, that the Torah was given. Tomorrow night we're going to start the festival of Shavuot, and we imagine ourselves, as I said before, being once again at Mount Sinai, and as a community and as individuals receiving the Torah. What is the Torah that we're going to receive this year? But how do we receive the Torah is the big question, right? And so there's a very famous and beautiful midrash that says about the first verse of this parsha, which says, "V'yidaber Adonai el Moshe b'midbar Sinai." God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. And the midrash says, "Lama b'midbar?" Why in the desert? Dafka? Why does it have to be in the desert? Ele lelamadecha. Rather, it is to teach you, Kol mi she'eno osei atzmo hefke kamidbar eno yachol liknot et Torah. That anybody who does not make themselves hefker, which means ownerless, which some commentators would say means I get my ego out of the way. I get any kind of notion of like what the Torah is, or even who I am, what I'm going to receive, what I'm not going to receive. I become like the desert. That amazing desert, some of those landscapes that I can close my eyes and see the sand and the rock and the acacia trees. I think of Joshua Tree, that amazing desert in California, and those unique trees that don't grow anywhere else. And I see all these images, and there's something about the inspiration of being in a wild place like a desert. And if we make ourselves like that, then, according to this midrash, we have the capacity to receive, to acquire the Torah, which is what we imagine ourselves doing on Shavuot. Hefker. Make ourselves hefker, like the desert, to receive the Torah. I'm thinking of it in a very different way this year, what it might mean to receive the Torah. Every single one of us, whether you are in first grade or whether you're in your 90s, every single one of us has the capacity, according to Jewish tradition, to receive the Torah new every year. And it needs to kind of surprise us and maybe shock us. delight us. There's an intimacy to it. And everybody, it says after the revelation of the Torah that we're going to be reading on Monday morning, it says, Kol ha'am ro'im et hakolot. All of the people saw voices. What does it mean to see a voice? And the Midrash again says that everybody received what they were capable of receiving. Kol echad ve'echad lefi kocho. Everybody according to their own capacity. And it makes me think of this parsha with everybody standing under their degel, under their flag. They're like, this is who I am. And the celebration of the uniqueness who each of us is. Whether you are a student in our Hebrew school, a parent or a grandparent of a student in our Hebrew school, everybody has the power to have their own unique experience of being, as it were, in a desert, or making ourselves like a desert so that we can receive the Torah. Many commentators, among them, of course, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, whose name I have to say at least once in every Devar Torah, talk about the fact that the word midbar, meaning desert or wilderness, if you put different vowels on it, it actually says medaber, which means speaking. And so the idea that, and those of you who've spent, as I have, time in the desert speaks to us. If you really allow yourself to be in the haunting silence of a desert landscape, there's some way in which it speaks to us, some way in perhaps which we hear some deeper truth about ourselves echoed to us in the midbar, the medaber of the midbar, the speaking of the desert. And I think that's also part of what it means to make ourselves hefker, to receive this. So I just really, I've so enjoyed, at the end of an incredibly hard week in so many different ways, but it's just been so delightful to see so many faces of our students in the Hebrew school. And I just want to bless all of you and all of us that we each have our own special and personal relationship with the Torah. That's the heart of our Hebrew school, really, is the Torah. Some of you, I hope, got to see that powerful little film, that short film that was shown at the JCC a few weeks ago called The Tattooed Torah. And really the Torah was the main character in that story. The Torah has its own personality. It never is the same thing. Every year, every day, it has a different way of revealing itself to us, of showing itself to us, of teaching us. We're in this period of the 6 weeks, which of course are coming to an end now, between Passover and Shavuot, where each Shabbat afternoon traditionally we read from Pirkei Avot. And so this Shabbat afternoon we will be reading from the 6th chapter, the last chapter of Pirkei Avot, and there's an incredibly beautiful teaching. It's the third Mishnah of the 6th chapter. And it says, Halomed mi chavaro perek echad, o halacha achat, o pasuk echad, o dibor echad, or afilu ot achat, tzarich linhog bo kavod. It says that anybody who learns from his or her friend, not his teacher, by the way, his chaver, or her chavera, like anyone who learns from their friend, from someone that they're in class with perhaps, like you've all been in class this year, if you learn one chapter, or one law or principle, or one verse, or one word, or even one letter, if you were to teach to your friend, hey, do you know the letter Aleph? This is the letter Aleph. If you were just to teach your friend that letter Aleph, you, according to this teaching, need to behave towards the friend who taught you that letter Aleph with great honor and respect. Because just in that one letter, it's like they are bringing a piece of the Torah. And because we treat the Torah with honor, we treat anything that we teach each other and learn from another about the Torah with that same kind of respect. Because people are kind of like a Torah, in the same way that we can be like a desert and make ourselves ownerless so that we can receive the Torah. So on this Shabbat that is going to go right into Erev Shavuot, I just really again want to thank all of you all of you who participated in the service, and there's still a lot to come with some of our younger students participating. But I want to thank every single one of you, your teachers, for all of the Torah that they have given you, and the Torah that you have given each other, because that's part of what happens too. We teach each other a letter, a word, a sentence, a chapter. We teach each other. And on this Shavuot, whatever we might be doing, Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, even if we're not fully aware of it, something is being transmitted, something is being sent to us, and we can receive the Torah so that it can help us wrestle with a very difficult world. It can help us find light when we see darkness. It can help us find something that feels true when we're surrounded by lies. And all of the different ways that the Torah can inspire us and nourish us, like milk. That's one of the reasons that traditionally, although some of us are vegans and we have lots of good vegan alternatives, but the whole idea of milk on Shavuot is because milk is like Torah. It's something a mother gives to her child, and that milk nourishes us. So may we all receive a Torah this year that really, really nourishes us and makes us feel a little bit more whole, a little bit more wise, a little bit more loved. So thank you so much, everybody, and Shabbat Shalom.